Hello and welcome, you cozy couch potatoes.
Hello and welcome, my cozy couch potatoes. This is Spice Rack Studios, the cozy couch, and we are still on the Diamond of Darkhold. This is book 3 of the City of Ember series, and we today are diving into chapter 8 called Prisoner. I think we know who that is. In chapter 7, Lina and Doon finally made it back into Ember, only to encounter some not-so-nice Emberites who have taken Doon hostage. Now, they don't know that Lina is there yet, so let's find out what Lina's going to do. Chapter 8, Prisoner. Later on, Doon would be grateful for two things about that awful moment when the men appeared. One was that Lina had lagged behind, so only he was captured, and the other was that the straps of his pack had been pressing painfully on his shoulders just before it happened, so he'd taken the pack off to readjust it. When he saw the two men, he was so startled that he let it fall. Okay, so maybe not Doon's book. He had just passed the corner of Roving Street, and there they suddenly were ahead of him. First one, then the other, two dark shapes emerging from a doorway, each with a light, and each one carrying some sort of bag or bundle. His immediate impulse was to greet them. He stepped forward and called out, and they whirled around at the sound of his voice. Doon saw that somehow they wore their lights on their heads. He saw that one was short and stocky, and the other slightly taller and thin. But aside from that, he couldn't see them well enough to tell if they were people he knew. "Hello," he said, moving toward them. "Who are you?" They stood silent. Doon stared, trying to get a look at their faces. Why weren't they answering? Then one of them muttered something to the other, and they dropped their bags and sprang at him. Doon backed away, stumbling, trying to turn, but he didn't move quickly enough. His right arm was grabbed, then his left, and though he twisted and pulled, he found himself caught fast. He shouted, "No, no!" His candle fell to the pavement and went out. He still could see nothing of the people who'd grabbed him. They were just shaggy dark hulks with a bad smell and lights that seemed to be growing out of their foreheads. Their hands circled his upper arms like bands of steel. The person on his left spoke. "The question is," he said, "not who are we, but who are you? You're the trespasser." Doon tried again to pull away. "Let go of me," he cried, but the two men were strong, though they were hardly taller than he was. "Don't struggle," said the one on his right, "or we'll twist your arms off." "Yorick, you mutton-head, shut your mouth," said the one on the left. "We're not twisting off any arms. Just march him this way and be quiet." Doon knew at once that these were not people of Ember. Though he hadn't known every single citizen of his old city, he knew there was no one who sounded like these two, or had lights like theirs either. Now that they were right next to him, he saw that each of them wore a kind of lantern, a cap with a tube attached at the front, and in the tube a candle, like a glowing horn. The candle cast weird downward-pointing shadows on their faces, but Doon could tell that the shorter man was older and hairier than the taller one, and the taller one had either a small mustache or a shadow beneath his nose. Doon's mind went in crazy zigzags as they dragged him along. He opened his mouth to call for help from Lina and then snapped it closed again. No, he couldn't let them know she was here. She could help him only if she wasn't a prisoner too. "This is our place, boy," said the man on his left, the older one. "We run it. No intruders allowed, and no sightseers. You're going to have to explain yourself." Somebody must have come with him, Pa," said the one on his right, who had a high, whiny voice. "A kid wouldn't come down in such a place alone." He gave Doon's arm a vicious squeeze. Doon yelped. "Don't hurt him, Yorick, you brainless bucket," said the one called Pa. "We can use him. Don't want him crippled." He tugged Doon's other arm. "So who came with you, boy?" "We know you didn't come alone." "I did come alone. I'm by myself," Doon shouted. Doon shouted it at the top of his voice, hoping Lina could hear him and wouldn't come flying to his rescue. Stay hidden, he thought at her. "Help me, but don't let them see you." "No need to yell," said the older man. "We're not deaf." But Doon was desperate to let Lina know that she mustn't come after him. She wouldn't be strong enough to get him free. They'd only capture her too. She needed to go back to Sparks for help. He had to tell her that somehow. He could think of only one way to do it. They turned down Otterwell Street. Doon threw himself into a frenzy of yanking and pulling and wrenching, at the same time yelling up a storm. "Get away from me!" he cried out, making the first two words much louder than the second two. I want to go home! Get your hands off me! Help!" What Lina would hear, he hoped, was "Get away, go home, get help." It was the best he could do. He stopped struggling. The two men gripped him more tightly than ever. "No use throwing a fit," said the older one. "You'll just get yourself all worn out and banged up." They turned into Harkin Square. Doon gaped. Here he was, in one of the places most familiar to him in the world, and it was utterly, horribly changed. The light they'd seen from above clearly had nothing to do with the 8-page book. It was simply a fire, burning right in the middle of the square, sending out a haze of smoke. In one place, a sort of living room had been set up, with a table and some armchairs, and a few cans and jars cluttered the ground. Around the living area were heaps of bags and stacks of books, in some of which Doon could see familiar-looking jars. He recognized pickled beets, powdered potatoes, and dried purple beans. So there was at least some food left here, maybe even more than he'd thought. 3 people moved around the fire's edge. In the light of the fire, Doon could finally get a better look at his captors. The older one, on his left, was built like a stack of bricks, wide in the shoulders, stout in the chest, a thick neck, and a head that looked too big for his body. He had an immense amount of rust-colored hair. It sprang wildly from beneath the candle cap on his head. It covered the entire lower half of his face in a tangled thicket of mustache and beard, and it poked out of his ears and his nostrils. His eyebrows were like eaves of a thatched roof overhanging his eyes. The younger one was taller and thinner, with little anxious-looking eyes that darted this way and that. He did have a small mustache, and on his chin was a brownish scruff of hairs, a feeble attempt at a beard. From both of these people came a strong smell, a smell of clothes unwashed for a long time, a grubby, sweaty smell. "Look what we found!" cried the younger one, as the others came running up to them. "A trespasser!" "I'm not a trespasser," Doon said. He tried again to wrench himself free, but the men's grip on him only tightened. The other people came up close to him and stared. They all wore the candle caps. One was a woman in dark clothes with black hair pulled tight against her head. She peered at him with small, mournful eyes. "Oh, trouble," she said. "Woe and alas! Daughter, come close." A girl who looked about Doon's age came and stood beside her mother. She was wide-shouldered and rusty-haired like the older man. She squinted at Doon, grinning. In her hand was a long fork, with which she gave Doon a poke in the leg. "Now, boy," said the man on Doon's left, "you have blundered into the domain of the Trogg family, which you see before you. Myself, Washington Trogg, known as Trogg to the world and Pa to the family. My wife, Minnie, my son, Ulrich, and my daughter, Kanza." Someone else lurked behind them. A boy, Doon thought, though he couldn't tell for sure. He didn't look like a member of the Trogg family. His hair was frizzy and pale, like a handful of soap suds, and he was small and flimsy-looking, and had an oddly lopsided way of standing. "What about that one?" Doon asked, tipping his head toward the boy. "Oh, him?" said Trogg. "He's not one of ours. We brought him with us out of pity." "Why?" "Bandits killed his parents," Trogg said, "so we took him in. Extra hands always welcome, I say." He pointed a finger at the pale-haired boy. "You," he said, "bring us that wooden chair." The boy went over to a straight chair and dragged it up to them. Doon saw that he bent awkwardly ways, down and up, down and up. When he walked, one of his feet was twisted at an odd angle. Trog turned to Doon. "Now," he said, "what is your name?" Doon didn't want to tell him, but Yorick pinched his arm when he didn't speak. So he said, "Doon." Could have picked a different name. "Doom," said Trog. He grinned, revealing square yellow teeth. "What a name! Your parents must have known you were headed for trouble." "Not Doom," said Doon. "Doon, with an N." "Oh," said Trog. "All right, Doon. We're going to have to tie you up for now. Sit him here, Yorick." The son pushed down into the chair and held him there while Trog rooted around in the heaps of stuff and came up with a long rope. A black rage filled Doon as they wound it around him, and he kicked and thrashed and tried his best to butt them with his head, but their strength was too much for him. And in minutes he was bound up like a package, tied to the chair, hands and feet completely helpless. The wife and daughter dragged a couple of boxes up close and sat on them to stare at the curious, captured creature. The son stood next to Doon, looking eager to reach out and twist an arm if necessary. The father pulled a pair of glasses from the pocket of the loose, grubby shirt he wore. He put the glasses on and squinted through them. They had heavy, dark rims and made his wide face look like a brick wall with 2 windows in it. His hands grasped his knees, his elbows sticking out. Behind him, the fire smoked and smoldered. "So," he said, "what I want to know is, who are you? How did you get here? And why did you come?" The whole family leaned forward to hear Doon's answer. Even the light-haired person lurking in the background came a few steps closer. But Doon was still so flabbergasted by the astonishing presence of these strange people in his city that his mind was a whirl of confusion. He couldn't think of an answer. He stared at the faces confronting him, and at the flames just behind them. It was like being in a bad dream, the kind where you're in some familiar place, your own bedroom, or your schoolroom, that has been strangely changed. So it doesn't look like itself. Worse, it doesn't feel like itself. That was how Harkin Square felt now, where there used to be glowing street lamps and people crossing the wide space on their errands. There was this savage fire and this strange and terrible family. "Speak up," cried Trog. "Explain yourself." Doon stumbled over his words. I just happened to. I'm just here by accident. I'll leave right away." "No," said Trog. "You will not." "Just try it," said the son, yanking on Doon's arm. "You'll get your bones broken." "No breaking bones!" Trog punched the air in his son's direction. "I'm doing the talking here. Be quiet, and get me a different pair of glasses. I can't see right through these." He yanked them off. Yorick hurried over to a box that seemed to be full of glasses. Doon heard them rattling as Yorick shuffled through them. "Here," Yorick said, handing his father a wire-rimmed pair. Trog put them on. They made his eyes look huge. "Really," said Doon, "if you let me go, I'll leave right this minute. I was planning to anyway. Why do you think I only brought 1 candle?" He thought with gratitude of his pack lying in the dark back on Greystone Street where he had set it down. He thought with gratitude of his pack lying in the dark back on Greystone Street where he had set it down. "I just wanted to take a look," he went on. "Sorry to intrude. I didn't know you were here. I didn't know any of this was here." He made a rolling motion with his head, indicating the city. "I found a crack in the mountain, and then there was a path, and so," he trailed off. "So if you'll just untie me, I'll get out right away." "Not possible," said Trog. "You don't understand. Now that you're here, you have to stay." Crouched behind the trash bin was the stink of old garbage in her nose. Gazing in horror at the transformed Harkin Square, Lina had seen Doon's captors drag him out into the square. She had watched as they tied him up and showed off to the other people. She could feel Doon's fury as the bearded man scolded him and jabbed him with questions. She too felt angry. Who were these people who thought they owned the city? But her fear was stronger than her anger. The words Doon had called out repeated themselves in her mind. Get away, go home, get help. Get away, go home, get help. She was so stunned by what had happened she could hardly make sense of them. Go home? What could he have meant? Her thoughts went first to the home she had here in Ember, over on Quilliam Square with her grandmother and Poppy. But of course that was her home no more. Her home was in Sparks now, a long day's walk across the hills. Could Doon really mean she should go back there? Back out through the unknown regions, back across the planks that bridged the pit, back up that long, long path? She hid behind the trash bin until her legs began to ache from holding so still. She heard everything, or almost everything. Sometimes the voices were too low or were drowned out by a burst of crackling from the fire, but she heard enough to know that these people had taken over her city and had captured Doon and did not intend to let him go. There must be some way to rescue him without going back to Sparks for help. Ideas sped through her mind. Could she make a noise and get the Trogs to run after her, giving Doon time to untie himself and escape? No, because surely they wouldn't all run after her. Someone would be left behind to guard the captive. Besides, how could Doon untie himself? His hands were bound. Could she dash out there, taking them all by surprise, and untie Doon and run off with him? No, because the untying would take too long, and they'd just capture her too. Could she wait and watch and hope for a chance to free him some other time? But when would that be? It might take days and days. She might never get the chance. There was no other way. To get help for Doon, she'd have to go back to Sparks, all that distance, and fast, and by herself. All right, my cozy couch potatoes, that is it for chapter 8. That is it for chapter 8. Wow. I was not expecting it to be random people and not people from Ember. But that makes me wonder, did they go in while people were still there, or was it already empty of Ember people? Hopefully we can find out. Next time we will be diving into chapter 9, and it is called Perfectly Safe and Comfortable. Okay. Well, that is it for this time, my cozy couch potatoes. I hope to see you next time. You have a good one. Goodbye.